The small cargo ship Ardent Dawn drifted slowly toward the planet. From a distance, the colony below looked normal, its white domes shining against the rocky ground. But inside the ship, silence filled the crew. Something was wrong. There were no greetings on the comms, no landing requests, no voices, only static. Captain Ryland leaned forward in his chair, staring at the empty signals on the screen. "They should have answered by now," he said, his voice low. His crew exchanged uneasy looks. The human colony of Helios 3 always sent cheerful welcomes to arriving ships. The settlers were proud of their little world. Yet today, nothing. The ship glided lower through the thin clouds. The crew expected to see people waving near the landing zone, children playing, drones carrying supplies. Instead, the landing pads were empty, covered in dust. No movement, no laughter, no life. "Captain, this feels wrong," whispered Lieutenant Mara. Her hands shook slightly over the console. "Where is everyone?" The Ardent Dawn landed with a dull thud. The doors opened, and the smell of smoke drifted inside. Ryland led the crew down the ramp, boots pressing against cracked ground. Buildings stood around them, but windows were broken, doors left open, and faint scorch marks lined the walls. The silence was heavier now, pressing into their ears. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. They walked through the settlement streets past fallen signs and broken machines. A child's toy lay in the dirt, its bright colors burned by fire. A food stall was overturned, its metal frame twisted. This was an attack," muttered Chief Engineer Cade. He crouched near a blackened crater. "Energy weapons, not an accident." Ryland felt a chill crawl up his spine. But why? Who would dare? They moved deeper into the colony. The control tower was half collapsed, its walls blasted open. Inside, the crew found shattered screens and dried bloodstains across the floor. Lieutenant Mara pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "This wasn't just destruction," she said. "This was slaughter." They searched further, their footsteps echoing against broken walls. The medical center was abandoned, its beds empty, its doors smashed. A transport crawler lay overturned, its wheels still half buried in sand. Then they found the beacon. In the center of the square stood a damaged distress transmitter, its light faintly blinking. Cade rushed to it, working the cracked controls with desperate fingers. Static filled the air, broken by fragments of sound. "Anyone, please help us." They came without warning. The voice was human, female, filled with panic. The message cut off, then started again, broken and distorted, burning everything. "No mercy, please tell Earth." The crew froze, every word pressed like a blade into their hearts. The message looped again, ending in a scream that faded into static. Lieutenant Mara turned away, tears in her eyes. "They killed them all," she whispered. "Men, women, children, everyone." Ryland's fists clenched. The galaxy was vast, filled with many species and many rivalries. But Helios 3 had been small, unarmed, only farmers and builders. Destroying it served no purpose except cruelty. "We need to leave," Cade said, his voice shaking. "We need to tell Earth. This cannot be ignored." The captain's face hardened. "Yes, but we must record everything first." They spent hours moving through the ruins, scanning every building, recording every piece of evidence. The colony's defenses had been shut down before the attack. The enemy knew exactly what to target. Whole families had been erased in one night. When they returned to the ship, the weight of silence followed them. The Ardent Dawn rose slowly from the broken colony, its engines glowing against the dark sky. Below, the ruins of Helios 3 faded into shadow. Inside the ship, no one spoke. The recordings played silently on the screens. Shattered homes, blood on stone, the broken beacon. A colony gone, its people erased. At last, Captain Ryland broke the silence. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned. "The galaxy will hear of this, and when they do, they will never forget." Outside the windows, the stars stretched endless and cold. Somewhere out there, the killers still watched, believing no one would care about one human colony. They were wrong, because that silence, born in ashes, would soon become a roar. The ardent dawn raced through the void of space, carrying the weight of Helios 3's silence. The recordings, the broken beacon, the ruins, and all saved in the ship's core. Captain Rylan knew the evidence would shake the galaxy. Humanity would demand justice, and the Council would act. That was what the Council was built for, wasn't it? To keep peace, to stop slaughter, to punish crimes across the stars. But in the deepest part of his mind, Rylan feared otherwise. When they arrived at the station of Veros Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council, the sight was overwhelming. Dozens of alien vessels floated like glittering jewels, their hulls painted with banners of 100 species. The station itself glowed with golden light, its spires stretching like a crown above the planet below. To many humans, it was a symbol of unity. Today, to Rylan, it looked hollow. The human delegation was given only a single chamber, far smaller than the grand halls where other empires gathered. Rylan and Lieutenant Mara carried the evidence crystal, its blue light glowing in her hands. Their boots echoed against the polished floor as they entered the council chamber. Inside, 1,000 voices hummed. Rows of alien leaders sat in their high seats, their forms strange and varied, scaled bodies shimmering under the lights, long-necked creatures whispering through gills, mechanical beings clicking in metallic rhythm. At the center stood the High Speaker, a tall figure of the Valori species, known for their smooth silver skin and emotionless eyes. Rylan stepped forward. His voice carried through the chamber. Helios 3 is gone. Every colonist murdered. We bring proof. Mara activated the crystal. The air filled with projection. Broken homes, fire-scorched streets, the cracked beacon. The final message played, the colonist's voice screaming for help, then vanishing into static. The chamber grew silent. For a moment it seemed as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Then came the murmurs. Some delegates looked horrified, their tendrils twitching, their eyes wide. But others, many others, looked bored, even amused. One alien lord leaned back in his chair, his scaled lips curling into a smirk. Humans always dramatize their losses, he said. One small colony. Tragic, yes. But the galaxy does not bend for every human tear. Rylan's fists tightened, but he held his voice steady. It was not an accident, it was an attack. Coordinated. Someone shut down the colony's defenses before the strike. Another voice rose, deep and booming, from a Krager beastlord. Evidence, perhaps, but proof of who did it? None. Shall we condemn an empire for a few dead humans? Mara stepped forward, her face pale but determined. A few? It was thousands. Families. Children. Erased. The chamber buzzed louder. Delegates whispered, laughed, shook their heads. The High Speaker raised a hand, silencing them. His silver eyes looked down upon the humans. We sympathize with your pain, he said in a calm, empty tone. But the Council cannot act without certainty. No species will be punished without clear blame. And as for your colony, it was far from the core, far from Council protection. Perhaps unwise of you to settle there. Rylan stared in disbelief. You mean, you will do nothing? The High Speaker's voice was flat. Final. The matter is closed. The words struck harder than any weapon. Closed. As if the lives of Helios 3 meant nothing. As if humanity's loss was just dust on the wind. Rylan felt heat rise in his chest. He looked around at the alien faces, some mocking, some indifferent, only a few showing true sorrow. He saw the truth in that moment. To the Council, humans were still newcomers, still weak, still expendable. Lieutenant Mara whispered, They don't care. And she was right. The alien lord who had smirked earlier leaned forward again, his voice dripping with disdain. One human colony gone. What is that compared to centuries of galactic order? Do not demand storms from raindrops. Rylan's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout, to curse them all, to demand justice. But instead he spoke quietly, his voice carrying more weight than a scream. One colony gone is enough to change everything. He turned. Mara followed, her face pale but burning with fury. The chamber erupted in laughter behind them. Alien. Voices mocking, dismissing, the doors shut. Outside in the hall, Mara stopped, shaking. Captain, what now? If the council won't act, who will? Rylan looked at her, his eyes cold as steel. We will. Humanity will. They erased a colony, and the council betrayed us with silence. Now the galaxy will learn what silence awakens. Far. Above the council station, Earth's small fleet drifted in orbit, waiting for their orders. Inside those ships, soldiers whispered of Helios 3, of the beacon's last scream. Anger spread like fire through dry grass. And in the shadows of space, deep within hidden shipyards long forgotten, something older stirred. Massive frames of steel, dormant for decades, began to hum. Humanity had been patient. Humanity had trusted the council. But patience was ending. The ardent dawn returned to Earth in silence. No victory music, no cheering crowds, only heavy air thick with grief. When the recordings of Helios 3 played on Earth's broadcast towers, whole cities went quiet. People watched in their homes, in the streets, in crowded stations. They saw the broken colony, the beacon's last cry, the council's mockery. And something shifted. For generations, humanity had tried to prove themselves worthy in the galaxy. They had joined the council, followed the laws, built colonies in distant sectors. They had bowed, compromised, waited. But now, patience cracked. The name Helios 3 became a wound in every human heart. In the capital, General Arden stood before the defense command. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his voice carried iron. The council will not fight for us, he said. So we fight for ourselves. Not in the light, not with warnings. In silence, until the galaxy trembles. Across Earth and its colonies, orders spread quietly. Civilian industries slowed, but hidden facilities roared to life. Shipyards deep, under the oceans lit up after decades of darkness. Old supercarriers, mothballed since the Terran expansion wars, were reactivated. Their hulls groaned as engineers stripped rust and ignited forgotten reactors. In remote asteroid bases, railgun platforms were tested again, their magnetic coils glowing white. Scientists whispered of weapons never shown to the council, designs kept in secret archives. Humanity had hidden its teeth long enough. Captain Rylan walked through one of these hidden yards. Massive ships hung in silence, skeletons of war. Workers swarmed over them like ants, welding, repairing, rebuilding. Engines thundered to life, shaking the cavern walls. Mara walked beside him, her eyes wide. How long have these been here? Rylan's gaze was hard. Since before the treaties. Since before the council told us to disarm. We obeyed on paper. But Earth never forgot how to build war. A cold thrill moved through Mara. She had thought humanity was weak, forgotten, small, among the stars. But here in the shadows she saw the truth. Earth had been waiting. Meanwhile, rumors spread across the galaxy. Merchant ships whispered of human fleets moving strangely, of convoys vanishing into dark space. Alien captains reported seeing massive vessels that shouldn't exist. The council dismissed it all as lies. But fear began to creep into the corners of alien courts. In one dim chamber, alien spies reported to their master. The humans are preparing, they said. We cannot see everything, but something is stirring. We hear of carriers, weapons, soldiers training in silence. The alien lord laughed. Let them. Humans are loud creatures. They threaten, they posture. But when war comes, they will break. Always. But far from his throne, deep in a black void where no council eyes watched, a massive shadow drifted. A supercarrier, larger than any ship alive, its hull scarred but unbroken. It moved with no lights, no signal, only silence. Inside, thousands of humans worked. Pilots trained in simulators, Marines drilled in steel corridors, engineers fine-tuned, weapons that could split moons. In the command chamber, General Arden stood before the glowing map of the galaxy. He placed a hand on the console. His voice was steady but filled with fire. They erased one colony, they laughed at our pain, now they will learn. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. The lights dimmed, and a symbol appeared across the supercarrier's walls. The emblem of Helios 3, a simple star with 3 rays. Every soldier saluted, every pilot swore. Every engineer tightened their fists. Helios 3 would be avenged, and the galaxy would never again mistake silence for weakness. The galaxy thought humanity would stay quiet. After all, the Council had dismissed their cries. To most alien empires, Earth was still weak. One colony lost was nothing in the grand scale of stars. But in the shadows of space, the silence was almost ready to break. The supercarrier Eclipse drifted like a dark mountain across the void. Its hull was blackened to swallow starlight, its engines silent. Around it, smaller destroyers and cruisers formed a hidden pack. No signals, no broadcasts, only waiting. General Arden stood on the command deck, eyes fixed on the holographic map. Red lights pulsed over the border worlds of the Zier Dominion, the Empire suspected of burning Helios 3. He raised his hand. The time has come. No warnings, no mercy. Strike, and let the galaxy hear our silence. The order moved like thunder through the fleet. Engines roared to life. Warp gates opened. Human ships surged forward, breaking into enemy territory with precision. On the border world of Raxor, alien officers were still laughing about Helios 3 when alarms screamed. Towers lit up as hundreds of human ships dropped from warp, weapons charged. The first railgun volley tore through the sky. Bolts of magnetized slugs ripped across orbit, striking enemy warships with unstoppable force. Armor shattered like glass. Engines burst into fire. Entire frigates split apart in seconds, their debris raining down into the planet's atmosphere. Alien commanders shouted in panic. Impossible. They were not supposed to have this power. But the humans didn't answer. Strike teams of Marines stormed the orbital stations. Drones hacked into defense grids. Every move was fast, calculated, merciless. What the aliens thought would take days happened in minutes. On the surface, citizens of Raxor stared upward in shock as human carriers blotted out the suns. Some cried out, some tried to flee, but the battle was already over. From his command chair, Arden's voice echoed, cold and steady. One colony gone, one world taken. This is the balance. The humans didn't stay. They didn't occupy. They left wreckage, silence, and a message. On the burned orbital ring, a beacon was left glowing. It carried only 3 words. Helios is remembered. When alien traders arrived days later, they saw the destruction. Entire fleets gone. Raxor's defenses erased. The message burned into their minds. Whispers spread like wildfire. Humans have awakened. Humans strike without warning. Helios lives through vengeance. In the council chambers, alien lords shouted in fear. Some demanded sanctions, others begged for action. But no, one dared send fleets against Earth. The council had mocked the humans. Now their silence was turning into dread. Back on the Eclipse, Mara stood beside Captain Rylan. She watched the stars burn with faint fire where the Dominion ships had fallen. Was this enough? She whispered. Rylan shook his head slowly. No, this was only the first strike. The galaxy hasn't seen what we're truly capable of yet. But they will. General Arden stepped forward, his voice iron. This is not just about vengeance. This is about memory. They thought humanity would bow. Now every empire will remember what happens when they erase even one human colony. The stars outside the viewport shimmered, vast and endless. Somewhere out there, more enemies waited, certain they were safe behind treaties and council laws. But humanity had learned the truth. The council's laws were nothing. and patience was over. The silence of Helios 3 had been broken, and the galaxy was only beginning to hear the roar. The strike on Raxor spread through the galaxy like a storm. No one expected the humans to answer so fast and with such power. Fleets that once mocked Earth now whispered in private councils, afraid to speak too loudly. On distant worlds, alien, civilians stared at news hollows showing the ruins of Raxor's defenses. Entire warships erased in minutes. Orbital stations cracked apart, the message beacon repeating again and again. Helios is remembered. Fear grew. Rumors became fire. Some claimed the humans had 100 more carriers hidden. Others said they had weapons that could burn whole planets. No one knew the truth, and that was the most terrifying part. Inside the Eclipse, the supercarrier that led the strike, silence hung over the command deck. General Arden stood before the fleet officers, his voice steady, heavy with purpose. They thought Helios 3 would be forgotten. They thought humanity would stay weak. But now they know. Every world that dares erase our people will face our vengeance, and every empire will learn humanity does not kneel. The officers saluted, their eyes burning with the same fire. Around them, screens showed more fleets moving quietly, preparing in deep space. Humanity wasn't stopping. Captain Rylan and Lieutenant Mara stood together at the viewport. Beyond the glass, stars glittered like cold eyes. Mara's voice was soft but filled with steel. Do you think they'll strike back, the Dominion, the Council, all of them? Rylan's jaw tightened. Maybe. Maybe not. But it doesn't matter. What matters is they'll never again look at humans the same way. Not after this. He placed a hand against the cold glass. One colony was enough. Enough to wake us. Enough to change the galaxy. Across alien empires, leaders panicked. In the grand halls of the Dominion, the High Commander roared in rage. How could humans do this? They were weak. But behind his fury was fear. Reports came in. Dominion fleets refusing to patrol near human space. Border worlds calling for evacuation. Soldiers who once laughed at Earth now looked over their shoulders. In the council chambers, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted over each other. Some demanding humanity be punished, others begging to negotiate peace. The High Speaker, once so calm, now struggled to control the storm. They were supposed to be contained, one alien lord hissed, not feared. But fear was already spreading. Back on Earth, the name Helios 3 was carved into stone monuments across cities. Children placed, flowers at memorials, families lit candles that burned through the night. Humanity's grief had become unity. No colony, no world, would ever be left undefended again. General Arden spoke to the people in a broadcast that reached every human system. His words were simple, but every syllable burned with truth. They erased one colony. They thought we would bow. But today the galaxy knows humanity remembers, humanity answers, and humanity will never be erased. The roar of millions answered across Earth and her colonies. In the months that followed, the galaxy shifted. Trade routes bent away from human space, not from weakness, but from fear. Spies carried stories of human fleets training harder than ever, of new weapons tested in secret. Some species whispered of alliance, desperate to stand beside the humans rather than against them. Others plotted revenge but hesitated, knowing the cost. And in the darkness between the stars, the Eclipse and its sister carriers continued to move silently, watching, waiting. One night, Mara returned to the ruins of Helios 3. She walked through the cracked streets where silence still lingered. She placed a beacon of her own in the colony square, a monument shaped like 3 stars, glowing against the night. She whispered softly, "You are not forgotten. The galaxy knows your name." Above, in orbit, the Eclipse released drones that formed a massive symbol in the sky, the emblem of Helios, burning bright so that even from distant systems, the light could be seen. And so it was written into history. One human colony was gone, but from its ashes, humanity rose with fire. The galaxy never forgot Helios 3, not because of the tragedy, but because of what came after.